Good afternoon. Welcome. It's Tuesday, April the 16th, 5 p.m. I'm going to call our council in-camera meeting to order at 5 p.m. We're going to be going into closed session, and the purpose of today's in-camera meeting is to address a matter pertaining to labor relations or employee negotiations, section 239(2)D, collective agreement terms for ratification. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Luss, seconded by Councillor Mink. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. We are now in closed session, so we're going to stop the live feed, and I will provide a rise and report publicly when the public portion of our council meeting resumes later this evening. Good evening and welcome. It's Tuesday, April the 16th, 2024. I'm calling to order our meeting at 5:30 p.m. It's a special council agenda. We're going to start with a moment of silent reflection. Please join me. Thank you. Moving on to 1.2, our land acknowledgement. The municipality of Port Hope exists on the lands of the Mississauga Anishinaabeg traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaties. We honor and recognize First Peoples as right holders and stewards of the lands and waters on which we have the privilege to live, work, and play, including the Ganaraska Forest and River. We pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We commit to actions towards truth and reconciliation by recognizing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, strengthening ties with First Nation, Métis, and Inuit peoples, especially those who make their home in Port Hope, and learning from Indigenous ways of knowing and being. We do so by recognizing the past and working towards a shared future. Going to ask if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest around the table. I note that none were received in advance of this meeting. Seeing none. Moving on to item 3, items for consideration. 3.1, presentation by Scott Cameron, General Manager, Canadian Nuclear Laboratories, regarding quarterly update, Port Hope Area Initiative. As listed on today's agenda, today's special meeting is to receive information from CNL regarding their quarterly update on the Port Hope Area Initiative, as well as information regarding Port Hope Harbour and Centre Pier in terms of an overview. We will start with a presentation from CNL with respect to their quarterly update, and I welcome Mr. Cameron to the podium. And please press that purple button. And you can start the presentation, and welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, members of Council, and fellow residents. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide my first quarterly update for CNL Port Hope Area Initiative, and particularly the Port Hope Project. The Port Hope Area Initiative falls under the mission of the Canadian Nuclear Laboratories to protect and restore the environment, address and safely manage Canada's nuclear waste liability. Mayor, that was an incredible land acknowledgement, and thank you for that, recognizing us. I'd like to this day add, I'd like to talk about my red dress pin that I carry in the spirit of Georgette. I wear red dress pin 320. Georgette Flint, age 20. September 13th, 1988, Georgette's body was found in Elk Island National Park. Cause of death was not determined. Janet Dunnigan is the artisan that creates these reflective pins and builds that person's spirit into the pin. I'm very proud to call her my neighbor. Today's outline, on behalf of CNL, I'm pleased to be able to share the highlights of the project since our last December update, which was my first time presenting as General Manager. As most refer to me, the new Mark. The CNL will focus on private property cleanup, talk about our plans for the 2024 construction season and highlight our work on the Harbor and Center Pier, the Highland Drive, Ravine, and then close with a snapshot of our community engagement opportunities over the last year. Alexander Street Ravine, as pictured there. Our project's underway and we've established a road to access ourselves into the radiological waste. A detailed review of the known waste locations determined in several pockets of low radioactive waste, with arsenic levels being the main waste volume driver within the Alexander Street Ravine scope of work. After very careful review, including difficult topography mitigation strategy, which includes several weeks of piling and sheet piling in close proximity to residents, reviewed the impacts overall to the environment. The decision was applying special circumstances to the Alexander Ravine to mitigate the impacts of radiological components, low-level radioactive waste. On the site, an overall correct path was the decision. This decision reduced the full-scale site from 13,000 square meters down to 4,900 square meters, thereby requiring removal of only 37% of the trees within the project footprint. My main focus as a new general manager, as the new Mark, everybody calls me, the CNL Historic Program, one of my top priorities as deliverable for the next 12 to 18 months, is develop the cornerstones needed for the project's teams to build a multi-year plan on the cleanup of private properties and road allowances. One of my key milestones is for the vision of building lessons learned on top of this, which I will discuss in the next several slides. This will also be completed in parallel with our major projects as they wrap up in the next several years. Through discussions with my team, we've developed a small-scale sites package to try and explain the processes to get onto people's private property and road allowances. The overall up there presents its first step is starting with characterization testing. You will see in the field what we call as the first drill cruise, or phase 1. From those samples, we determine if there's low-level radioactive waste found on the property. That drives us into the next phase and continue through design phases. Out of those design phases, residents will see a second set of drill crews that are setting delineation, building an underground 3D model for the scope of work for that property. Also includes survey results and other site visits to locate on-ground facilities, utensils, utilities, and others. So residents do see people on their site that represent CNL digging in to help us build an underground 3D model. As residents walk into the design phase, they become part of the solution. As the properties enter into the remediation and restoration phase, residents can contact the office, and we work close with them as we develop the R&R packages. Private property remediation. Not all of our sites are equal. I've learned this in my first 90 days. These are complex projects in very small quarters. An example shown on the slide is the difference between a simple and complex remediation. The complex remediation shown in these pictures is an excavation area in the dark gray that extended to property lines. Most of the dig was greater than 3 meters, which created problems when approaching property lines. The left hand of that slide shows excavation of road allowances into the street. On the top and bottom of the excavations were neighboring properties that either needed remediation, were not required, or not performed. Approaching the property lines and road allowances created a significant challenge and possibly undermining the road allowances in the street and neighboring properties. All of this was done under strict surveillance of CNL field staff. The site required extensive sloping in some areas that was reviewed by our engineering teams. While the picture may not show it, this is a very congested, heavy work area with multiple spotters and operating with a vision, what we would call direct speed or safe speed. When you visit a small-scale site, the staff talk about PPT, people, properties, and trucks. Lessons learned. One of the turnovers I did get from Mark is developing an intense, deep dive lessons learned program. We've taken lots of past projects, working through a variety of excavations over the last several years, and been taught significant learning opportunities. This is an example of one of those learning opportunities. On the left picture was a plan of the project. On the right picture is the actual dig that was performed. What we've learned out of this is we had to excavate beyond design basis, which is not an uncommon. We call it chasing. The process of doing that, we encountered previously unidentified obstacles, in this case, a buried swimming pool. The contamination soil was under the garage and under the foundation. The decision was made that required the garage to be removed, excavation performed, and construction of a new garage. This property exhibited severe water infiltration at the same time. One of the challenges I took from Mark was taking a look at the considerations and understanding what I would say in the day in the life of a resident. This is what we found out when we sat down and whiteboarded these. Homeowner scheduling, availability, canceling, rescheduling. Properties waiting, indeterminate decision. That's leading to multi-year planning. Loss removal of underground utilities for that work, that homeowner. Conditions or structures and property line restrictions. Limited access to remediation area or heavy construction traffic in some areas. Right? Accessibility, mobility, health issues. Right? Limited street parking and options. Pet or children access schoolyards, bus, and other transportation. Package and mail delivery also must be considered for that resident. Overall, we consider for the town increased construction traffic as we break out our areas into regions. Possible impacts from other construction activities leads us to work very close to the municipality on planning road and other closures, permitting challenges, additional requirements, regulators, bylaws, etc. This I have rolled up into two major factors, what I will call as guiding principles after scheduling work or critical considerations. Some of the property owners have paused active remediation and they're waiting for a decision on the proposed change in the cleanup criteria of RSOC. That puts us into neighborhoods having R&R completed as a checkerboard, which is very inefficient. And if the cleanup criteria is not passed, will require us to remobilize to those neighborhoods that did not get remediation and restoration. The other consideration is the second bucket is property line restrictions. One of our biggest challenges in this category is required of tree removal, which have roots that go into one or two or three more properties. In this case, we understand the homeowner's concerns, and we understand the challenges of tree removal for that homeowner. Without the remediation or removal of that tree, R&R affects neighbors and prevents waste remediation, which is our core goal. As we work with our neighbors and through this, there are options we can work through. But one question I do have, and I've taken to our contractor, as we get into these, we have engaged professional guidance of arborists to work with those residents to understand the impact on the trees. Other area was area for improvements for us. Feedback quickly and efficiently from some of the properties we worked on is providing more detailed property owners update in front during the design and remediate process, and that is being built into our program. Implementing a master construction contract, which is two. We do have two major contractors now under MCC contracts that are ready for the 2024 construction season. Implementation of neighbor completion approach on construction activities. Let the neighborhood know what's going on, not just the owner. Right. Instituting guiding principles by year end. It's one of my deliverables. I'm going to call that the day in the life of a resident. So they understand when they see 6, 7, 8 people standing at a construction site, they understand the roles and responsibilities of every one of those workers. And the last week, which is most important, is developing a framework, a year-by-year neighborhood regional schedule for residential properties, road allowances, and work the municipality have them scheduled far in advance. Private property remediation successes. In the last 18 months, property restoration processes have been more efficient, and the field teams have learned from past experiences. On-site remediation timelines have decreased. Property owner directed mediation created at owner request. Responsiveness for property owner request has increased. A new program is CNL has self-performed interior remediation has proven to be effective, successful, and beneficial to the homeowner. One process of this is CNL's responsive to incorporates property owner feedback to improve processes. One item that is being used widely now is payment in lieu options for homeowners and property owner direction remediation. The overall update where we are for the major projects, work completed as listed there. The total is 1.8 million tons, or 963,000 cubic meters of waste has been safely stored in a long-term facility since April 2024. Work underway, Lions Park. I'm proud that it exists. That Lions Park has now been remediated. Low-level wastes have been removed, and we're now returning that back to the design bases. Coal gas is working through there and other properties. Also scheduled for approximately 90 properties this year. Last year, that crew completed over 100 properties remediation. They completed more homes in 1 year than they did 3 years before that. CNL invests in Port Hope. Part of my transition into plan was asking those questions. And I was proud to say of how well CNL and our key partners have invested and work in the municipality, especially downtown Port Hope. Community health and well-being, $22,000 has been a donation, 80 hours of corporate volunteering. 150 staff work in Port Hope. 32% of those employees live, shop, and dine locally, including myself. Contractor spending, we're in multi-millions. A lot of those contractors at key contractor partners use local subcontractors. CNL is a citizen. We own 5 properties and we lease 2 properties. Those are our main offices. Long-term impacts, investments made in CNL community carry last effects. Port Hope Dog Park, industrial site cleanup, and infrastructure upgrades. Doing daily business, purchase from local businesses, priority for CNL, suppliers, equipment, accommodations, and dining. Myself and our key contract partners, end of April, we are going to sit down with the executives. We know downtown is going to be challenged with the major construction. I'm meeting with my key contract partners executives. We're going to look at and work within our policies and procedures and develop incentives for our key contract partners and their employees to invest their time downtown during major construction. Community well-being, just some examples of the team out doing what our team does and being great corporate citizens. Lastly, to the pool. We asked our contract partners ourselves, where do you shop? And we just keyed it in. The businesses here is amazing and listing out. I know it's been read, but it's incredible of how much our key contract partners, CNL, and our staff have focused on the municipality of Port Hope and downtown Port Hope. Last item, communication with the public, municipality, our regulators. I've worked for OPG for many years, worked at Chalk River, spent some time at White Shell. I will have to brag about our communications team. The interfaces that I see with this team is amazing. 6,400 private property communication, phone calls, written meetings, visits. PHI Indigenous engagements, 50 in 2023. Indigenous awareness incentives, 8. Almost 800 phone calls working with the Port Hope Project and others. CNL externals, open houses, meetings, internal, and I'm proud to say the end of May, the CNL Board of Directors will be here for the week, downtown Port Hope, and visiting for the week. Thank you very much, Merci, and I will now open back to the mayor.
Thank you very much for that presentation and update. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues now for any questions or comments. Councillor Less.
Scott, only you can appreciate how much work you've done and your team have done. We see the figures, but I know there's lots of effort, lots of time spent on it. I don't know, do you follow social media in context to the cleanup?
I am now starting to follow social media. Before that, I would use Facebook to track my kids.
There was a comment that I thought was kind of valid, that have you switched contractors for residential remediation, or added a new group?
Now, our two prime contractors, task order 2 is Bird Construction. They're a GC. And task order 3 is WSP. That is who we deal with. They may have switched around subcontractors, but that is in their purview to deal with inside their contractors, but we have not switched contractors.
Okay, could I read this to you just for context? And it's
Sure.
not a slam, it's just something you should be aware of. So it pays to be home and watching when CNL workers are around. All ended well today. I contacted CNL, explained the workers were in our laneway doing boreholes where the 2018 remediation had taken place. The person I contacted acted quickly and pulled the current contractors off the area. Question: how is it that the transfer of information is being accomplished? And do the old contractors know, or the new contractors know what the old contractors did? And is there records of, I'm sure there's records, but are they passed on? Just something for you to consider. You don't have to answer that.
I will like to find out where that is, and I will turn over to Bill so we can take that now and provide council with an answer.
Thank you, Scott.
I'm going to just go in order. Councillor Todd.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Scott, and welcome. I asked Mark in his last update around the capacity of the waste disposal site, and he had said that we were getting sort of to the end of the capacity of that one. What's the plan after that?
They're coached by 7 people. Y'all should work in the nuclear industry. I did take that from Mark. We are projecting that we are still within our contingency plan of the original scope of storage of the waste. It is 1.8 that's come, I would say, major sites. So our major sites, most of the remediated waste has been removed. We've taken a look at the current scope of around 800 homes that we have to look at, and we projected 30% contingency on top of that. And those numbers bring us into the max capacity of the long-term waste facility. But currently, right now, the design of that facility will hold the waste that we receive.
Okay. And should we exceed capacity, what would be the plan B?
Plan B, there is a contingency plan. I have talked to our license holder, our compliance manager, and that would be to start the process to open up cell 4. But at this time, my team has told me they're in high confidence that we will not need that contingency plan put in place. I will answer that question better in the next year.
100%. I appreciate contingencies.
My turnover from Mark was that's on my radar.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
The other question I have for you, and I think in your presentation you do a really wonderful job about demonstrating how the process works and how well things are getting moved along. One of the things though that seems to come forward from the community often is around communication. Your last second to last slide talks about the communication that has gone out. If people want information, what is the best way to get it? And if they have gone through some of the channels and feel they're not getting the information, what would be the contingency on that?
So I wouldn't expect contingency. I would expect the process to work. I did drop off some cards today. Our offices are open during regular business hours. Comms team is available. I know there has been some questions in the past and concerns. Living in Port Hope, I do know some people have brought it to my attention. I have met with the comms team. I'm fully confident that it goes through there, but I'm very accessible. I will even, hand out my business card to people, work through the processes. But I would like them to go through the comms, right? If they're having issues, pick up the phone. I will engage and have no issues helping them through. What I have learned through some engagements with the residents is in the past, there was an area for improvement. I also believe that the significant focus on major sites to get them up and running and get them completed, to make the milestones for Port Hope was the priority. At that time, I absolutely believed that was 100% the right priority. Now, as I transition out of major sites, it will be a focus for small scale sites. That's including looking at our communication plans for the future.
Thank you so much for that.
Okay, moving around the table, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. My question also around communication or let's say information sharing. And I think seeing that you would be here this evening, a number of residents reached out to myself and as I understand it, other members of council with long lists of questions that they hoped we would ask you this evening from the table, so to speak. And at the same time, a prominent member of our community posted a question online earlier this week, basically lamenting that residents are not able to come and ask questions of you this evening per our agenda and procedural bylaw. That sparked a pretty long conversation with 60 individual commenters and growing. And it got me thinking about how residents access information. Some of the questions, like they range from all sorts of things, even to a neighbor who put this lovely bouquet in my hand this afternoon, asking, when is PHAI coming back to take all the stakes that they left behind a couple of years ago? So it's from nitty gritty questions to how does this neighborhood grouping work and what is the timelines? And it strikes me that I think a lot of the communication work and the public engagement opportunities that you're doing are incredibly informative. I attend almost all of them, but they're they tend to be specific to a topic or a particular neighborhood group or a particular site. And I think what the residents are craving is more of an open town hall kind of forum where they can come and ask their questions regardless of where what aspects of the projects those questions pertain to. So while I'm sure my neighbors would like those 20 individual questions read out from the table, what I'd actually like to ask you is whether you would commit to doing something like a town hall so that each of those neighbors could have the opportunity to ask their long list of questions to you without keeping council here till all hours of the night.
Deputy Mayor, I appreciate that feedback. And yes, part of my pre-job brief from our Joe, or I guess retired CEO now, I lived Pickering A on return to service, and Ontario Power Generation did not communicate well when I was in that role. I was manager of fire protection, and there was long days with council, evenings. It was a very interesting learning opportunity. What I do commit to is I want to build a year-over-year plan. So I meet with the residents. They understand if they're 26, 27, 28, 29, or 30. They might not like the answer, but I can commit to it and give that range. Once that plan's built, I'm more than happy to have town halls. And I do believe I've heard from many residents living here that there's an opportunity just to communicate better. And I will take that challenge on. But again, at the project level, major sites was the focus of CNL to get them going. Right? I've heard, neighbors in my area talk about the eyesore down on the water. One of my drivers is to be proud of the legacy we leave there. That's still on my radar, but I will take that feedback back. I'll work with my communications team, and we'll look at some kind of town halls open forum.
Understanding that that's not going to be tomorrow, what would you suggest then to members of this council in terms of how do we get answers to those residents' questions in a timely way? I reckon if that's not of a town hall sort of forum isn't going to be in the near term, because I'm a little torn because I don't see it as the role of this council to act as an intermediary between you and residents, but there seems to be a fairly large group of residents who don't feel they're able to access you in the way that works for them or whatever it is, and they're coming to us with these questions. So how would you like to receive those 20 odd questions that I've got jotted down?
Emails could start. I will take that. But you know what? You're right. We are burning up precious council time on questions that we could ask and answer outside of here openly and fairly and transparently. I did drop off a bunch of communication cards with our CEO. I'm more than happy to hand them out to get them, right? I think residents coming to council is a failure on my part, and I need to solve that. Do I need to open different communication lines? Yes. As we go into small scale sites and ramp up on multiple homes, I believe the communications team and CNL is going to be challenged. I need to take a look at that staffing level and that level and increase it to meet the residents' demands. So I will commit to you, work with my team, and I will get back to yourself in the next 30 days of what those communications improvements look like. I encourage everybody to pick up the business cards here. Is all of our information there, how you can reach into the project.
Moving around the table, Councillor Mink, or yes, Councillor Adam.
Hey, Newmark, great presentation. Appreciate it.
Mark?
Newmark.
Newmark, yeah. By the way, the old Mark said I never got any questions up here, by the way. That was part of his turnover. So
I think you actually did a wonderful job at your presentation, and
Thank you.
I appreciate the hard work throughout all of the project. Now, one thing that it kind of caught my eye a little bit was the 150 staff that work here in Port Hope and the 80 hours of corporate volunteering. In a couple of weeks, I've got a volunteering option available as we're going to be doing some cleanup around town as we know that it's like Earth Day and all that kind of stuff coming up. So I'm going to be organizing up a cleanup on Sunday, April 28th from 2 till 4. Just something for maybe your staff if they want to join in and help clean up the town a little bit.
I would be more than happy to take that challenge on. CNL is also going to recognize Earth Day. We've scheduled a cleanup, and being the general manager of the project, I was assigned the task. I get to drive around my pickup truck and pick up all the waste bags. So I know we're doing a walking trail on the east side, which is really good for me because my wife and I do walk the dogs there in the summertime. But I'm more than happy to communicate through my team. The 80 hours, I believe, is low.
Yeah.
Just myself and a team that did Colas Night would add up to half of that.
Yeah.
But that was our first cut, and we're looking for information to be fed back voluntarily. We are looking at a program how we can track that more closely. I believe our contractors, our major contractors in CL are more engaged with the municipality than it's laid out in that slide. I need to get those facts and figures in front of the council in the next quarter.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you so much. And maybe I'll try to get in contact with you so we can make sure we get the locations.
Absolutely. We got great business cards we had made up to hand out. I have a couple of cards. I'll give you my address.
Okay, I've got a few questions and comments. Circling back to what the Deputy Mayor was asking you about how to get those questions answered and how to get those questions potentially disseminated to a wider public, I wonder whether or not you might consider frequently asked questions in some of your standard forms of communication, a mailbag of sorts, because chances are if someone's got one question, probably 50 other people have that same question, and that might also help with answering and doing it in a way that not only uses your existing communications, but as you think about other forms of doing it. I also want to acknowledge and thank you for your commitment to incentivizing through whichever means you can the spending and focus on our downtown as we go through a difficult number of months. And with the number of employees, that will make a difference to our local businesses. So I do want to acknowledge and thank you. I want to step back for a minute and ask you a question that may be a bit challenging to answer, but I think it's an important one. I realize that you've been on the job only for a very short period of time, that you're already putting in place many different changes. You're trying to steer the ship in a different way. We've had many conversations about that. But I'd like you to reflect on the project writ large, where we started, where we're at, what the original budget was, where we're at now, and a big question of how do we continue to build some kind of trust or feeling that things are different, that things are changing, that this project is not going to continue on until big question mark, because there have been timelines, there have been budgets, there have been milestones that have been put in place, and they haven't been met. And so how do we build that trust with this community, and what is it that you can say at this point about where we're at and where we're moving into the future under your leadership?
You're right. That is a tough question. One of my guiding principles I'm bringing to the team is more of a project focus, where we can be predictable. Living in town, working for Ontario Power Generation, I knew about the project, heard about the project. One of my mins had her property done. I got some great feedback from her. I think in the past, there was so much focus on the major projects. The key part of the project got left behind. And it's my personal opinion that key part of it many years ago, history that we need to learn from, was they forgot about the residents and the focus that they're watching us. And I think part of our communication plan is to be transparent and open. We need to learn from them. We need to be open and honest and say what we are learning from them and build that trust back with the residents. When we say we're going to be there, we're there. I don't like getting phone calls and saying, what's this person checking out for me? And I call my team and they're not sure. It means we didn't communicate with the residents. Long-term, Mayor, building the confidence back up the team is going to be performance. Me standing up here telling the council, the mayor, deputy mayor, and my fellow residents that what we are doing, we deliver on. We will have hiccups. We will have issues. We could plan work on a road allowance, and then the municipality has emergency work. That takes us off the schedule and puts them on. Those are explainable variances. But what I need to put in front of the council is performance quarter after quarter. After several of those performance quarters where we've actually told you what we're doing, we deliver, that should start building with confidence with the council. Once we build confidence with the council and the mayor and the residents, we start to build that trust. There's a culture we have to change, and it's an uphill battle. But we're ready for that battle.
Thank you. And I'm just really cognizant of time, and we've got 2 more presentations to go. So I am going to have a mover and seconder to receive this presentation for information. Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Todd. All in favor? That is passed unanimously. And Scott, you're not moving anywhere because the next presentation is by you. And it's regarding the Port Hope Harbor and Centre Pier overview. So I turn it back over to you.
All right, in the context of time and the pressure time with council and the coaching I received, I'm going to start off at slide 6, as I assume all the historical information we provided has been read. So, Port Hope 2010, this is where our story begins. And I will do a very quick overview, respecting your time. 2021, as listed there, I'm going to assume is key products, is the installation of the turning basin, the walls, removal of geotubes, facilities, and temporary break walls to support construction. All of this was completed. To give a snapshot picture of what we're dealing with, this is the contamination in Centre Piers. As you can see by the 2 contamination profiles, the largest is the industrial waste that's been deposited over the last 70 to 90 years. Completed work prior to 2019. Radiological contamination on the Centre Pier is a responsibility of chemical as per the legal agreement. Remediation of the Port Hope Pier and Centre Pier occurred after radiological contamination was removed. Buildings were removed by Cameco. Removal of the Centre Pier temporary storage site, and a protective layer was placed in Centre Pier to safely encapsulate contamination until remediation. What was done since 2019? Installation of billy curtains to isolate the work area from the Ganaraska River and Lake Ontario. Fish preservation work was completed, including 10,500 fish from the turning basin in the approach channel, which means I don't think my grandfather baited my hooks when I was down there as a kid. The fish blocker was installed to prevent access back into the work area. Completed work was completed bulk dredging. Hydraulic dredging was recognized impractical in 2022. Lessons learned applied from this enhanced mechanical dredging continued to the main method of removing low-level radioactive waste from the harbor floor. And we also established a sediment processing area, which is now referred to as the SPA. There was temporary bracing in sections for the harbor walls as needed. Construction of the new harbor walls, primarily along the side of the west side, and we decommissioned the GO2 dewatering area in Center Pier, what allows us to advance work in parallel. 2014, functional sediment processing area is working as expected. We dewater, we mix the low radioactive waste, and we transport all that waste to the long-term waste facility in Port Hope. Surface water monitoring continues in-ground and near-ground work where it's ongoing. Mechanical dredging is continuous. Bulk dredging is currently followed up by cleanup dredging for calculating sediment. Site vehicle decontamination facilities capacities is still producing as expected. Flood protection barrier is still in use and is visible in that picture. We use internal haul roads to minimize truck traffic and control through there. Ongoing rehabilitation and restoration of harbor walls and continuing. April 2024, the Turning Basin West Wall and Pier South Wall and upcoming revetment work is in process, and remediation of Center Pier has started. These are just representative pictures of the ongoing process down there. Just want to highlight that dredging did start in 2019 and it's still ongoing. This is the current schedule of the Port Hope and Center Pier. I have recognized the timeline still goes out to 2026. I have been challenged through external and internal executive teams. The current schedule is undergoing a full whiteboard review to renew and reopen opportunities to safely advance the schedule. This review will include all key contract partners and key members of the Port Hope Municipality team. Take a look at that schedule. That is a commitment I've made to the mayor and my executive, and that will be completed in the next 90 days. And that is the current state of the harbor in April of 2024.
Thank you very much for that update, and I will again turn it to council for any questions or comments about this. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I have a question. Based on the scope of the remediation that's being done on the Center Pier, will there be any restrictions on the use of that pier once the restoration is complete?
We are going to restore, as per the contract and the agreement, the waste is 1.5 meters down that's removable, and on the outside areas down to the water line. And future lease, that will be up to the municipality. Our goal is to clean the area, remove the waste as the contract, and provide a clean slate to the municipality. Now, on that, I am working very closely with the CAO and the team as there is opportunities to work together in a collaborative working environment for future use of, internal supply services or something that where we can do it now. Putting it all down and then ripping it up to put infrastructure in would be a waste. So I'm working very closely with the CEO and her team and working together.
Thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then. Thank you. Thank you very much. I need a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Adam and seconded by Councillor Les to receive this for information. All in favor? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to our last presentation, 3.3, presentation by Director Davidson, Works and Engineering regarding Harbour and Center Pier remediation update.
Good evening. I'd like to thank Scott for the very comprehensive presentation. I think I will likely be able to reduce mine a little bit in the interest of time. So as Scott noted, that the Center Pier and the harbor is a combined site. It is both an LLRW site and an industrial waste site, which adds to the complexity of the site. There are a number of agreements that have been signed. The first one goes back to the original legal agreement in 2001, and then there have been a number of subsequent agreements that have been signed over the years, and the last one was in August 2023 which is the special circumstance for the center pier harbor wall, which is essentially what Scott just mentioned, how there is a special circumstance that for the material around the perimeter of the center pier. That material will remain in place to protect the integrity of the walls. So the harbor, the final restoration of the harbor is a combination of steel sheet piles and revetment walls. So the north wall was planned to be a revetment wall, the east wall would be a sheet pile wall, west wall would be a sheet pile wall, and then a portion of the west would also be a revetment wall, which is a revetment wall is essentially a sloped wall, and sheet piles are straight. The restoration plan was based on the basic principle that the site would be dredged to the hard surface or bedrock, and then the walls around the harbor, approach channel, and the river would be replaced or reinforced. The detailed design approach and detailed designs were reviewed by municipal staff, the GRCA, and our municipal peer review team. And discussions with CNL, of course, are ongoing. We have a number of ongoing dialogues with CNL. We have monthly meetings and meet additional meetings as required to discuss any items that may arise in the field, such as the dredging methodology changes and wall designs based on encountered harbor floor conditions. So the final restoration of the center pier is intended to be essentially a blank slate to allow for future development. There is going to be water, sanitary sewer, gas, and hydro service provided to accommodate future development in the center of the pier. There have been some discussions with CNL, and they are still ongoing to try to make the best use of those services in the future and try to determine the best location for them to accommodate any future development. And there also is a berm that would be required, though the design and flood design of that berm is still in progress and in partnership with the GRCA is still under review. So restoration was based on the basic principle that the site would be returned to the municipality as a blank slate to allow for a wide variety of future plans. There will be a restriction that residential will not be permitted on the center pier. Utilities are being installed. The site will be used for parkland only and not for residential. So residential will not be permitted under the risk assessment. Thank you. So ongoing discussions are occurring with CNL as part of our river waterfront and Riverwalk master plan. And the risk assessment identifies a 1.5 meter clean soil cap. So that means is essentially the 1.5 meters of all soil will be clean and remediated on center pier. The material underneath that will still be impacted. And that is where the restrictions for non-residential comes into play, because that material is intended to remain. We still have the ongoing dialogue, again, monthly meetings and additional meetings as required as changes may be encountered in the field. So part of the risk assessment, it has been ongoing since 2021, where the first risk assessment was submitted to the Ministry of the Environment. A number of comments have been sent back and forth between CNL and the Ministry of the Environment, with hopefully the final submission being submitted in the spring or summer of 2024.
Thanks, Jeanette. We're tag teaming on this, so I have the pleasure of giving a brief update on the Waterfront and Riverwalk master plan work that occurred specifically related to the central waterfront. So as a reminder, this plan was approved by this council late 2023, and it was the culmination of multiple community engagement activities, background studies, and future planning. So the desire or the goal for the waterfront master plan was to set the vision and establish the character of the center pier and harbor, noting that ongoing remediation and restoration plans, those dialogues continue and will for a period of time. The characterization or vision of the master plan includes a vibrant multi-use waterfront,
combining parkland suitable to hosting outdoor events, review for potential commercial buildings within that area, as well as a connection from the West Beach to the Inner Harbor, the Center Pier, and East Beach. Those were kind of the guiding principles from a waterfront master planning process. So the waterfront master plan establishes the framework to guide planning and implementation for investments in the future. It's not a black and white plan, knowing that there are conversations and engagement in the community that will continue to occur. But really identifying the investment into public amenities, facilities, and infrastructure to achieve the long-term vision of the waterfront and the Ganaraska River. So it's intended as a tool to set the expectations for future projects within the study area. Considerations include, again, public open spaces, low-rise buildings, offering commercial opportunities, civic public uses, and the potential for a marina in the Inner Harbor, which will be considered through an updated plan. Just some very high-level key considerations that have been included in the waterfront master plan. This is a partial list. It's not a complete list of all the considerations that need to be identified. Obviously, the PHI project that we heard about this evening, and that collaboration and ongoing dialogue from the municipality with CNL and other partners, I think is something that we can highlight, obviously, through the conversation today, that it is ongoing. There's problem solving that comes on a regular basis from a technical standpoint, but then also balancing that community need and connectivity. Flood risk, which has been mentioned as well. And the goal from a master plan with a flood risk is looking at the area as a whole. So if there's flood mitigation that is implemented on the Center Pier, there's definitely an impact to the East Beach. So looking at what those models are and the long-term planning is a very significant consideration. Environmental assessments are also a consideration that will have impacts for timelines, when implementation can occur, and when the planning for those environmental assessments should take place is a target identified within the master plan as well. A final few notes about design. I think this is one area that we can say within the master plan that has significant potential to have a call for proposal or a design shred when that area is returned to the municipality. We refer to it as a blank slate, but I think there is significant opportunity that we'll be able to engage the community and what that plan might look like. One of the largest considerations working through the master plan process, I'll look to three of you that were at the table with the working group, was not holding up master plan process because we didn't know what we could do or what the Center Pier or the harbor would look like. So it was really trying to find that balance with that characterization. And the last aspect is related to the marina, in the sense that the 2013 business plan did find that there was sufficient seasonal and transient boater interest and demand for a marina development. So this updated waterfront and Riverwalk master plan does identify, also through community engagement, that there is a real strong desire in the community to put the port back in Port Hope. And the master plan does identify a suggested updated study from a marina standpoint. So working through the implementation of that plan and collaborating, from a works and engineering standpoint, remediation, CNL, I hope that this gives you a full picture of where we're at and moving forward. And again, thanks CNL to be here to give that overview with us.
Thank you, Director Snook and Director Davidson for those important updates. I'm going to turn it over to the table for any final comments or questions in regards. Yes, Councillor Bink.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for the presentation. Just a question, and this is regarding Waterfront Riverwalk Master Plan. You mentioned guiding principles that were used, and a principle that I have not seen applied, and I'm just curious if it was included, is maintaining sight lines to the water. Every plan I've seen for the Center Pier has a garage, has vehicles or whatever, right in line with Queen Street, which blocks the view. And I've seen that with other things such as the parking lot down at Chemtron Park where it's turned to not face the park. And I know a lot of communities actually have bylaws prohibiting sight lines from being blocked. So has that been considered at all in this process?
Yeah, thank you for the question through the chair. That concept has been brought up in a number of facets. I know from an ACO standpoint, the heritage component, that was a big conversation that came through the process and has been identified in the plan. Chemtron, for example, working from a final design standpoint to kind of shift, street view, tree canopy impacts from, viewing the lake. So that is a concept that is reflected in the plan. It's in various places. It's not called out as a guiding principle in and of itself. But those considerations also, building sight lines, again, through the great feedback from an ACO standpoint and other stakeholders, is definitely included in the plan.
Thank you very much. And I think at this point, I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder to receive this for information. Moved by Councillor Todd, second by Councillor Mink. All in favor, and that is passed unanimously. It's now time for the confirmatory bylaw. This bylaw confirms the proceedings that took place this evening and provides for formal adoption through a bylaw. Can I get a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Mink. All in favor, and that is passed unanimously. So this concludes our business to be covered on this afternoon's agenda. We've reached the end, and I'm in a position to adjourn. And just before we do, I'm cognizant of the time, and we do have a bit of a meeting in front of us. We will take a full 10-minute break, which means we will start 5 minutes later than scheduled. Thank you.